Good morning and welcome to those who have joined the live streaming event this morning. I'm Councillor Gordon Wheeler, the Chairman of the committee. I'd like to welcome to the first virtual meeting of this committee. I know other committees have had virtual meetings, but this is our first. And this is being held, as you probably know already, being held remotely. For the benefit of the viewers of the live stream, I've now asked the Clerk of the Committee, Sarah Arman, to list the other members and officers present today. Sarah?
Thank you, Chairman. So the other committee members present today are Councillors Richard Butler, Errol Henry, Stephen Garner, John Longdon, David Martin, Liz Plant, Stuart Wallace and Yvonne Woodhead. And we also have present Councillor Maureen Dobson. And in terms of officers, as well as myself, we also have Martin Carnarfin, Contract Manager from the Police Department, and Doug Coots, Suzanne Hayden and Ian Patchett from VIA. Thank you.
And for Gary Wood as well.
Gary Wood as well, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, but that's phone ringing. Bear with me a second. I hadn't expected this. I'll just take it off the hook. Excuse me. Thank you. I now have to ask the committee to note the appointment of myself as chairman of this committee and Councillor Errol Henry as vice chairman. There's no vote required, just a formality we need to go through. And then please, I've asked membership to note the committee members as listed on the agenda, and Sarah's already read out the list of the committee members. So again, we don't need to take a vote or anything else on this, just a formality, just for you to note, please. And thirdly, can I ask please the minutes of the meeting, which you've all got in front of you or you've all had, is a true and accurate record of the last meeting? Unless anyone tells me differently. Oh, David? David, you're on mute. You're happy with that? Okay, you are happy. Okay. No one's dissented, so I'm assuming everyone's happy. Thank you very much. Apologies for absence. Sarah, would you come in for that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So we have received apologies from Councillor Andrew Brown and Councillor Stuart Wallace is substituting for him today.
Thank you. Good morning, Stuart, formally, and thank you very much for substituting. Much appreciated. Declarations of interest. Do any members present have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? And secondly, do any members present have any private interest, pecuniary, non-pecuniary, to declare? There's not a shaking of heads, so I'll take that as no. Thank you. In that case, item 6, I'll hand over, which is the recommendations on the highways drainage review. We'll bring Gary in a minute. Gary Wood in a minute. I formally move the recommendation, which is included on page 9 of the agenda pack. And do I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I second it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henry. I'd now like to invite your views and questions from members, and please indicate if you'd like to speak using raise your hand facility by raising your hand to the camera, whichever way you prefer. Right, Gary, can I bring you into the stage, please?
Thank you, Chair. So January the 30th seems quite a long time ago, but this is when committee last met. And so the report of members today reflects the deliberations of that committee on this topic. And you'll see in the report that it covers our approaches to drainage champions, gully cleaning arrangements, our use of telemetry and CCTV equipment. And as you've already mentioned, Chair, that the recommendations are on page 3 of the document or page 9 of the pack. And colleagues are in committee today from both the County Council and VIA, and are happy to take any questions from members. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the paper itself, on the recommendations? Right, David first, and then you, Liz, next. Thank you. David. No? You having problems, David? Oh, I think it's yes. I've got you, John, as well.
Yeah, can you hear me now? For some reason, my arrow froze.
I can hear you, David. You're fine.
So, just like to, on behalf of the Ashfield Independents, I'd just like to offer our condolences to yourself, Gordon.
Thank you.
Moving on from that, yes, it's very interesting, and my highways manager has produced me a new pamphlet, and it's really good. the information in it is really good. But in the past, I have had quite a few issues with the cyclic drainage cleaning. I don't know why
Okay.
some of them have fell foul.
We lost you, David. We're trying to get you back in the meeting, David. Just bear with us.
Oh, he's still here.
It's Gordon that's froze on mine.
Yeah, it's David's still here. I can see David. It's Gordon who seems to have.
My cursor has disappeared. I don't know what's happened there. But good job, it's a touchscreen as well, isn't it?
Yes, it appears it's the chairman that has frozen. So if we can just pause the meeting for a few minutes until we get him back online, bear with us.
We'll just talk about.
Works. It's a touchscreen as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, my cursor has completely disappeared now. But anyway, back to the gullies. Right. So
Sorry, David. Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. We're just okay. We're on.
Thank you, Sarah.
Really, my question is when as a county councillor we report the gullies that are blocked through the Minots app or the website or even through your highways local area officer, could you answer the question as to how long generally you expect them, how long the turnaround is on it? Because obviously I had two on the B600 Alfreton Road that have got grass growing out of them. I reported them months ago. And then I've got another one on Smeeth Road, Underwood, and then I've got several others across Sutton, Lucknow Drive, Bridge Close, Garden Lane, York Street, Cavendish Avenue, also Kirkby Folly Road and Cardinal Court. And these have all been reported for quite some time, and then it seems to take quite a while to get round to fixing them. So could somebody answer me the question about the time frame it takes to answer them, to get them cleaned out? I've actually had a lot of issues with flooding because Jacksdale floods quite regularly, and the new area officer for flood relief system, Denise McAndrew, she's absolutely fantastic. And I've used the bore cutting system, contractors or whoever you're using, for one drainage system, and we're going to look at another one. So I'm quite happy with the way things are going, because those systems have not been touched for 15 years. So I'm happy with that. I'd just like to know more about the time span for when a county councillor reports it, because obviously you report it and then your resident comes and says, you haven't done nothing, nothing's happened. And I can see now that they marked up, but it's the time span I think that needs to be more clear about, so that as county councillors we can give our residents assurances and information about the time frame of the turnaround.
Okay,
from reporting to action.
I will bring Doug in, but any specific inquiries relating to your division, perhaps Doug could deal with you afterwards. But as a general point, you're quite right. We need that advice and information from Doug. Doug, can I bring you in now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, councillors and other committee attendees today. So to pick up on your comment, Councillor Martin, those will come in and go through to our drainage team. So that both the asset team and our drainage team would be made aware of those. We would then look at working with our provider ACL to find out where they are and what cycle they are in relation to those particular areas, or we could deploy our own the VIA units that we got as backup as well. In an ideal situation, I would like to see that within 2 weeks we should have attended to those. Clearly there are some issues that you've highlighted, and I'm quite happy to work with yourself to actually pick those up. Like, obviously we have got a finite resource, but where there are specific problems, particularly if they're causing flooding type issues, we will prioritise those. But I'm happy to take individual comments after the meeting and follow up with individual councillors if there are specific areas which we can investigate what's happened with those.
David, if you could speak to Doug immediately afterwards, David, that'd be really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not criticising it. It's just constructive criticism ongoing, really. I mean,
understand that.
I'm very happy with the system. I mean, they've been fantastic down Jacksdale. You know, there's just a few little issues on a couple of gullies, cyclic cleaning, you know.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would add at this stage, I know Doug is aware of this, despite some residents, despite being advised when the team out there to clear gullies, seemingly refuse to move their cars. And more often than not, the cars are immediately above the drains. And what do you do? What do you do?
Well,
team have been back, and yet the same offenders are there again. Very frustrating for VIA and Doug's team, I know.
It's the easiest thing in the world to criticise from the sidelines, and that's generally what residents do. So, you know, I expect it and I take it on the shoulder, but, you know, I think if we had a more sort of like committed timeline, then because some of them have fell foul of that, you know, so that's all.
Yeah, if you talk to Doug afterwards, I'm glad in principle you're happy with the system. As David, that's really good to know. And Doug will talk to you about the specific issues which you mentioned just now. Thank you. Liz, you're next.
Can you hear me? No?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear? Right. Okay. Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions and comments, really. Again, on the gullies issue, obviously there are parts of West Bridgeford that are, you know, covered in cars, and therefore, obviously, the gullies do get missed. And I was just wondering, do they have to remain missed until the next cycle, or does anybody come back and see if if they can actually do it at another time? So that was that on the gullies. Gary mentioned, and I think he pronounced it differently than me, telemetry, but I think anyway, I wanted to know what that was, because it sounds very interesting. And I also wanted to say that in terms of the communication, both with other authorities and with the public, obviously that is very much to be welcomed. I mean, I've had problems in the past sort of getting through to Severn Trent Water. And the thing is, they're all connected and they all obviously make such a difference to as regards gullies, floods and goodness knows what. So we need to have that communication be as the best that it can be. In terms of communication with the public, I was wondering how are they going to do that? I mean, where are these videos going to be put or whatever? And but that's also to be welcomed, definitely. And I have to say, in terms of the riparian owners, I had an issue in my patch, which I have to say the county council, the land was leased, obviously, to someone else. And the response was very, very good, both from the the one who was leasing the land, and obviously from the county, to actually get them to do their bit. And it has made a difference to that area of Lady Bay. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I'll bring Doug back in a minute, but Gary, can you answer the very technical question, please, from Liz?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Plant. I'll just put my video on so you can see me speaking as well. Yes, the idea with the telemetry, or however you pronounce it, is really just to give us assistance, so that what it would really mean is either remote cameras or remote sensors that can measure the flow or the level of water, that gives us better intelligence of what's happening out on the ground when storm events are taking place. So for instance, we could put those cameras at trash screens, so we can see when they're getting blocked in a live way rather than having to go visit them and then take some appropriate action. It's certainly an area that the flood risk management team, Sue Jakes' team, has been looking at as well, particularly in the sense of working with the Environment Agency around early warnings for flooding events. So it's an area that we're exploring at the moment to try and get the best use and be as efficient as possible. And then on the communications side of things, I think generally in highways over the past couple of years and through the good auspices of this committee as well, we've taken the view of trying to do more video explainers to explain the approach that we're taking and to try and socialise that with the community in a better way than we currently do, because often it can be quite technical. So to try and humanise it and make it really relevant, explaining it face to face. So the intention would be to do that and to have that on our websites as well. And we're also currently working on a winter maintenance leaflet for members, which will not only include winter maintenance around ice and snow, but it will also cover our preparations and communications arrangements around any storms that we might have over the winter period. In terms of your question about returning to gullies, I'm going to hand over with the chair's permission to Doug, if he might pick that one up, please.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, please. Welcome back, Doug.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that question, Councillor Plant. So as part of the work, if we know in advance that there is a particular road with parked car problems as such, we do now do a series of letters to the residents in advance, and we put signs up on each of the roads. In terms of when we still go out there and find parked cars, as the Chair mentioned earlier, it is a common problem we have. The team do try to go back at least twice when they're in the area. So when they walk down a particular route, obviously that's on the schedule for the day, but quite often they're within the area for several days. They do try and go back, but we do get a number of repeat cars still parked on the gullies, etc. Ultimately, if we can't get it after a couple of further attempts, then unless it's reported as a specific issue, it would probably end up waiting for the next cycle. But if it is obviously addressed through a resident or through yourselves reporting it, we would then try to get back to it. But we do have, as part of the way that our contractor works, they do go back to those ones. They are highlighted, and whilst they're in the area, they do have at least another attempt at it to try and get to those.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Doug. Are you happy with that, Liz? Thank you. John?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to reiterate what members have been discussing, because we've all had flood problems in our patches. Most of mine have been in Trardick, a place called Cranberry Close. One of the when you visit it, one of the problems I've argued about in the past on planning is don't put houses lower than the road, and that does cause a problem with the flooding quite a bit, as we know. But I would like to congratulate our people who eventually got it all done, because they were inundated with the work. I also like to continue at the moment. So it's going to be a question. I'd like to thank the drainage, putting in the 4 drainage champions and the flood management officer. When that's I've known about this for some time. Now, when that position is filled, I take the view that we will all be contacted, who and their contact details. Am I correct? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Longley. John, Gary or Doug, do you want to answer that one?
I'll let Doug take that question, but I suspect it's through your district manager contact, but it's probably best to get confirmation from Doug about those arrangements.
Thank you, Gary. Doug?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, essentially that would be right. So once we have all those posts filled, we would then highlight those through. Each of the relevant district managers will be aware of those individuals as such. We will pass that information through that medium, if you like, and also we can give updates in the regular communication that we're setting up with members, which is currently being trialled as a pilot, but in future we're hoping to roll that out across all members, and that will give an opportunity as well to catch up on events or any particular issues, whether it be drainage or other issues as such.
Thank you very much.
No, that's excellent, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome, John. Thank you. Richard, Councillor Butler, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first point has actually been covered already, and that was the point in paragraph 10 about the increased communication with our partner agencies, and in particular Severn Trent Water. I know I've had incidents, we've all had incidents where flooding has occurred, and of course there's always a danger of Severn Trent saying, well, it's not our problem, it's yours, or vice versa. So that's encouraging to see. But I also just wanted to ask for confirmation, and I think I probably know the answer, but just to be on the safe side, in paragraph 4, where we're referring to, I beg your pardon, paragraph 3, where we're referring to mud on the highway. Yes, that is an issue, and I suspect it's a growing issue because, as we all know, around the county, more and more houses are being built for reasons that we all know about. And and I'm pleased to see that we've got these new staff coming in, the compliance officers, which is encouraging to see. But of course, they can't be everywhere all the time. So really, just to check, we're out and about all the time. Will we be able to report mud on the highway? And if so, how do we do it? Will we do it in the normal way via the online system? Will there be perhaps a little box on the system where you can choose what the thing is you're raising the issue about? Just to check how that's going to work out, because I suspect it will be a growing problem if we don't keep on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for your question. Can I bring you back in, Doug, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, thank you, Councillor Butler. So yeah, I'd anticipate that as you picked up, we do have a number of increased compliance staff who will be out and about, and we should pick these up more, but we'll also have the staff to go and deal with them. In terms of reporting them, yes, you can report them through the normal channels. You could report it to the district manager who can deal with it, or you could put it through as the general inquiries, if you like, and we will log that. I don't think, and maybe Suzanne or Ian could confirm this, I don't think there's a drop-down box currently for that, but it's certainly something we could look into.
Thank you, Doug. Suzanne, would you want to come back on this one?
Yes, I think I'm on. If you
can
hear me, if not see me.
Both.
Yes, at the moment, if you could report it through your district managers, then they will make sure that it goes through to the right channels until we get everything in place. On confirm, it would be ideal that we can do it automated, but if you just focus on contact through your DMs at the moment, that'd be helpful.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hopefully it answers your question then, Richard.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Councillor Henry, Errol.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Just something I want to check up on point 4 of the report. You said something about being more robust planning comments. I just want to know what that means, this robust planning comments, and also about the proposed changes to planning laws, and what impact do you think this would have on our work going forward? In paragraph 6, there is you talked about 96% of the gullies are being cleaned. So 96% of how many gullies are being cleaned? That's all I need to know, really, from you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks ever so much, Errol. I'll bring Gary first, and then I'll go back to Doug. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Henry. Yeah, in terms of the planning comments, trying to make it really clear in all of our correspondence with planning authorities and with the developers that they've got responsibilities, not only in terms of what they build, but how they build it. So those construction phase plans that they need to submit, it's making sure that they're mindful of the mud and the potential for flooding during construction, because we have had some incidences across the county where the mud issues have been a real problem. We've had to close roads, and we've been in repeated correspondence with developers. In the past, we've taken a gradual approach to that. And I think what we're saying here is we're going to be taking a harder line from the start. We've also had some issues as well with sites where, because of the nature of the construction and the way the construction has been phased, that it has caused some flood risk to surrounding neighbouring estates and neighbouring properties. So that's another area that we're looking for them to be more mindful of as they're making their plans for the build. In terms of the white paper, I don't think the detail is there yet in terms of what impact it might have around flooding comments, but the County Council are engaged with that white paper. The consultation is started, and so we'll be bringing a report to Communities in Place Committee in terms of our response on that one. And in terms of the gully numbers, I'm going to probably ask one of my colleagues to take that because I don't have that information at my fingertips.
Okay.
So I don't know whether Doug has got that.
Appreciate that, Gary. Doug, do you have the information or do you want to come back with the information?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Henry. What I can tell you is that the 96% relates to that in-year programme. The gullies are planned over a 2-year programme. Some are addressed on a 6-monthly, an annually, or an 18-month basis, depending on the risk and how we see them filling up, if you like. So it would be that year, so it refers to 1920. So of the 100% that were programmed for that year, 96% were addressed. I don't, like Gary, I don't have the actual numbers, but I can get them for you if you're interested.
That would be very helpful, Doug, if you wouldn't mind. Are you happy with that, Errol? You're on mute, Errol.
Yes, that's fine. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David, I just see your hands up. I hope it's quick, David, because we've got a very chunky item to follow.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Just to answer Councillor Butler's query about a separate page for mud on the road. The other day I reported a pothole issue, and it wasn't really a pothole issue, it was a pavement issue. And in the comment box, I put, you know, something about the quality of the repair because it was just Veerfix slapped on the pavement and it just didn't look very good. So that got picked up. So I suspect if there was mud on the road and you were reporting a street or pavement issue via the website and put the comment in the box, it gets picked up by your area manager. Improvement and change yesterday, we were talking about the MyNots app, which is also another very easy way for councillors to report automated reporting. So it's very easy on there. There was at one time on the committee, and perhaps Suzanne might be able to answer this question. On the website, I think for multiple reporting, there was a page where you could fill in your details and they were permanently there, but I can't seem to find it. So if anybody could help me with that one, because that would be very helpful for all councillors to have a permanent page. So when they open the website, access reporting potholes or streetlight issues or whatever, they've got a permanent page for multiple reporters. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy? Suzanne, do you want to take that? You're muted, Suzanne, I think.
Those sort of issues, if you can go through with your district manager when you have your meetings, that hopefully they will be able to take you through where they are and how you can report those. Previously, hasn't it? So I'll try and make that a little more clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Suzanne. Maureen, I must have missed your hand, but I'm told you want to speak. You're very welcome, of course. I come to you in a minute, Stephen.
Do you want me to come in now?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah,
thank
please
you.
do.
Thank you. Well, you heard me say before the meeting started that I was one of the pilots for the County Council information pack. Can I first, all I want to do is I am going to send Martin Knaffin a full report on what I think. And also, I just want to say that I think Chris Wiseman, I think it's Wiseman, has done a good PR and promotional document. And like Suzanne, I will say to every member of the County Council, you have a district manager, go through the district manager. By all means, if you want to go through the other way of reporting, doesn't work very well for councillors. Perhaps we should leave that for the parish councillors. And perhaps we should all encourage our parish councillors to do a bit more reporting themselves. But I'm very happy with what I've seen up to press. Mike Keeling and I had a good meeting, and I just want you to know that I think it's spot on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Maureen. And I'd like to add Laura Trussler, my district manager, is brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you. It's just a quick comment. The biggest problem I have is the leaves in the winter. and we never seem to address that as getting the leaves up. And I think that's probably 90% of the problems with block gullies. Is there any way we can formulate with our district partners to clean the leaves up earlier, or put other defence mechanisms over the grates to stop them clogging up? I'm going on, you know, your Nottingham roads and your leafy suburbs, which that's one of my biggest problems with drains. So it's just a, you know, comment, or, you know, how can we address that, or is it possible to address it? That's all.
Thank you, Stephen. Much appreciated. Gary or Doug, one of you want to come in?
I'm happy to take it, Chair.
Thank you, Gary.
If that's okay. Yeah.
Yes,
So I think the answer there is it's sort of a fact of life. It's this situation that we operate in. We do attempt to coordinate with the districts, but obviously the districts have, you know, they've got their own plans and their own priorities as well. And to ask them to all of a sudden just go and clear all the roads within a couple of weeks is a big ask, I think, for anybody. So we do our best around it, but I agree with you. It is an issue. I think one of the things that we need to focus on going forward, and it's a conversation I've been having with Doug, is those areas that we know are susceptible to flooding, and that's actually part of the rationale around the way that we empty the gullies at the moment. So some gullies get emptied more frequently than others, and so you know, the idea is that those areas that there's more risk of flooding, we do pay more attention to them anyway. But I'm always interested to hear what members have got to say around that, and if you've got particular locations where you think there's a flood risk and you don't think that we empty the gullies frequently enough, then it would be useful if you could feed that back through your district managers.
Thank you, Gary. Well, there's an offer from Gary to your district managers. So I'd ask all councillors today, if you've got issues, please report them for your district managers. I think everyone here today will agree we've got excellent district managers, so please do that. And those councillors, obviously, who are also on districts as well, again, liaise with your districts to help this issue. So we've got some joined up working where possible. Much appreciated. Thank you. I think that's probably it now. I don't see any other hands raised. So unless anyone I've missed, and if I have, please let me know as soon as you can. The recommendations are in front of you to seek approval to take forward the recommendations contained in the report, Community and Place Committee. Now, I'm going to ask if anyone doesn't agree with the recommendation or can't support the recommendation, let me know, please, by raising your hand virtually or otherwise. Otherwise, I shall take it that we're all happy with the recommendation as printed on page 3 of your papers. Okay, lots of nodding, so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Right, bear with me, lots of pieces of paper here. This is the problem, we're trying to work virtually. Item 7. I think, Gary, you're taking this one, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder whether you want to mention the recommendation first.
I will do. I haven't got it. It's in my script, Gary. Thank you. I just want to be sure that I got the right person. That's all. Thank you. I formally move the recommendations which include on page 14 of the agenda back. Do I have a seconder, please?
I second it, Chair.
Thank you ever so much, Errol. Much appreciated. And I'd like to invite members' views and questions of members. Please indicate your hand in the normal way as spoken before. But I think I'll let Gary make a start on this one. Are you happy, Gary, to take questions, or would you rather wait till the end? And depending on the format you've got in front of you. Which would you prefer?
Thanks, Councillor Wheeler. If we could take the questions at the end, I think that would be really useful. And the way we're intending to do this, I'm going to briefly introduce it, and then we have Martin Knaffin, who's the NCC contract manager, who many of you know and work with, and also Ian Patchett, who's the asset manager in VIA. They're here today to bring this to life by way of a presentation. And so if you could keep your questions until the end, that would be very much appreciated. So by way of introduction, this is obviously an important topic area. The document in front of you sets out the legal framework and also some of the national guidance and the local practice documents that we have as a county council. And the paper also covers the current funding arrangements in paragraphs 15 to 18. And as ever, we're very interested in members' questions and concerns and observations. and we'll try and garner those and pick them up and generate another report back to committee next time. So now, with your permission, Chair, I'll hand over to Martin and Ian to bring it to life a bit more by way of a presentation.
Thank you. Before Martin or Ian start speaking, I'm sure Errol will agree with me. We've been through the presentation with both Martin and Ian, and I really thank them for their efforts there. And I'm sure the presentation will be extremely informative, but enough of me. I'll let Martin move on, get on with it.
Thank you
Martin,
very much.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I'll take control of the screen to share the slides with members.
There you go, Martin. There's power. You've got control of the screen.
Absolutely. So hopefully everybody can see that okay?
Yep. Yep. If no one's told me otherwise, so answer is yes.
Right. As Gary was saying, the format of today's presentation will be a bit different to the one we've had before, because I'll be sharing the presentation with Ian, who is Vire's asset manager, and he's got a wealth of experience in this matter. We will be transferring control of the presentation over midway through, so please bear with us if we have a bit of an issue with the technicalities of that. So the first slide I've put up is to try and give members a view of the scale of the assets which Nottinghamshire maintain. I don't intend to go through the full list of them that are on there. They're in the report and they're on this presentation, which you should have emailed out already. But there's a couple of highlight items I'd like to bring your attention to. So one is the total road length. So you'll see we've got 4,438 kilometres of roads. And to put that into context, from Land's End to John O'Groats, it's 907 kilometres as the crow flies. So that gives it some sort of context as to the scale of the network. There's also a couple of items on there that we don't often speak about at committee. Well, I don't personally. These are around street lighting columns. We've got 94,000 of them and 1,211 highway structures. So, they're substantial parts of our highway assets, and I think they merit us discussing them further. And to give you members a view of what the value of that asset is, if we were to build it from scratch, the value of the assets we've got and the land they're on would be £10.7 billion. So that's the value of the asset, and it's by far the biggest asset which the council maintains. The next slide I've got here is to try and give some indication of where those assets are located. So you'll see Bassetlaw and Newark, being predominantly rural locations, they have significantly larger proportions of the network length, whereas Ashfield, Broxtowe, Gedling and Mansfield tend to be quite comparable, the more urban areas, and Rushcliffe fall in between the two. The next slide I've got here is to say, why do we maintain the asset? For people like myself, it's what we do. It's all the way through. It's like a letters on a stick of rock, but I think it bears talking about again. I've put a few bullet points at the top of that slide, but really what they all boil down to is just recognizing that virtually every journey that we do, or every delivery of goods or commodity, will use the highway in some point. The highway is vital to our way of life and the economy as well, which is it's essential that we maintain it. At the bottom half of the slide, you'll see a snippet from Section 1 of the Highways Act. What that's saying is, it's a statutory duty for us to maintain the highway. We need to do it. If somebody's injured by our activities or inactivities, then it's legitimate for them to come to us for recompense. So what we want to do is make sure that we spend our money on maintaining the highway and not paying insurance premiums, which the money was given us to maintain the highway. So that's where we want to make sure our efforts are concentrated. And finally, it's not on that slide, but ultimately, it's the right thing to do. I wouldn't want to go to sleep at night thinking either my activities or my inactions had led to somebody being injured in some way. So it's just the right thing to do for us to maintain the highway. And we've spoken about highway funding. There's an element in the report. I think it's there for members to see. But the item I'd like to bring your attention to is, I think, the third bullet point down on there, the DFT capital maintenance, which includes the incentive fund. you'll see there's just over £14.5 million there. So of that, the incentive fund makes up £2.5 million. Now that's, in the past, the needs-based formula would probably have come to that figure, but now that £2.5 million has been split off. And the DFT give us that depending upon our performance in a self-assessment questionnaire. Now the self-assessment questionnaire, it's a robust document. It takes a lot of time and effort to do, and it's signed off by our Section 151 officer. But one of the fundamental lines of inquiry in that questionnaire is whether we've embedded the principles of sound asset management practices into everything we do. And this includes communications with members and stakeholders, and hopefully you've all seen the asset management leaflet we prepared for members. But we may also wish to improve our members may also think that we should improve our communications with members of the public and make them more aware of what we do. So as you can see, if we were to fail on that asset management, we wouldn't get a reasonable score on the self-assessment questionnaire, and that would be very punitive. It would be very detrimental to our ability to maintain the highway network. But luckily, I'd like to say that, well, not luckily, but with a lot of effort and work, I'd like to report we are a Band 3 authority. That's the highest possible grade we can be. And this is the final slide I've got before I move over to Ian's section. There's a slide here about performance management data. This is how we record the quality of our roads and how well we're doing. Historically, the figures there at the bottom, 4, 9 and 19% for roads required, well, where maintenance should be considered. And you'll see we've generally met those historic targets, apart from where we slightly failed around the unclassified roads. But a lot of the money which has been invested in the network through the additional county capital in recent years has been invested in that part of the network. So what I'm going to do now with Commission Chair is to stop sharing the presentation and allow Ian to take over.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Again, if you've got any questions, please reserve those. We'll come on to them more later. Good morning, Ian. Welcome back.
Can you hear me okay?
You certainly can.
Excellent.
Can't see you, but can hear you. I can't anyway. Pardon me.
Okay. So what you see in front of you now is you can still hear me okay, is a standard deterioration curve showing how effectively regular intervention and less invasive cheaper treatments is more cost effective in the longer term. The red line you can see on the graph there is what
Chairman, I haven't got any of this. I've got nothing.
All right, Yvonne. Don't know why.
Can the rest of you see it?
Green with this, with the blue circle and IP in the middle. That's all I've got.
Okay. Martin and Sarah would have heard that. We'll see what we can do as soon as we can, Yvonne. Thank you for telling us. Apologies.
Do I need to log out and log in again?
I'll await advice.
The rest of you can see it okay?
Yeah, it's clear here.
Yeah.
Can see the whole graph, table, everything.
Do we need to pause, or can you deal with this remotely to help Yvonne, please, Sarah or Martin?
Chairman, Sarah is suggesting that we perhaps email the presentation to Councillor Woodhead so she can at least see it while everyone else is looking at it. Obviously, if there's a problem with her device.
I'm on my iPad.
Right, okay. We'll see what we can do straight away, Chairman. Help.
Okay. Well, we'll carry on for the timing. With your approval, Yvonne, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, I can hear.
Thank you very much indeed. Please carry on, Ian, if you would.
Thank you, Chair. The red line you can see on the graph there is what we call a deterioration curve. In simple terms, it's every road in the county is somewhere on that curve. They will deteriorate over time, obviously. At some point on the curve, apologies. At some point on the curve, you'll start to have utility reinstatements appearing and potholes, of course. And the green lines you can see at the top of the graph there, they represent what we call non-invasive treatments, surface treatments, such as surface dressing or micro asphalt, which in an ideal world, these types of treatments will be carried out fairly frequently at minimum cost to ensure further deterioration is arrested. The cost of fully resurfacing or reconstructing a road is many times more expensive than frequent preventative treatments. This can also ease the burden long term on revenue budgets through reduced pothole repairs. So in terms of asset management principles, whilst there's always been an element of surface dressing in the annual capital maintenance programme on the whole, Nottinghamshire has historically followed a worst first methodology. And you know, what is that? That's easily understood by the general public, particularly when they are badgering the local representatives such as yourselves, as everyone knows what a terrible road surface looks like. They're generally full of potholes which may have been repaired or otherwise utility reinstatements, maintenance patching that we've carried out, and above all else, the ride quality is usually quite poor. So everyone can see and recognise this. It's not difficult to understand why people get annoyed by it. So of course, worse first then. What this actually means is by following a first worst, essentially only treating those roads and footways which have reached the end of their useful life and not also considering those sites which are beginning to fail, but overall less deteriorated, you're effectively allowing a raft of these sites to eventually reach the end of their life. So by just concentrating on what's in the red square at the bottom, you're effectively not concentrating on those in the long red rectangle, and they will eventually slide down to meet them as well. A bit like bailing out a bucket full of holes. So the application of good asset management principles then can't rely solely on input from the general public, councillors and so on. It requires vast amounts of high quality data, condition data and so on, usable data. So where are we at the moment? Well, right now we've got data in numerous places, hard copy in filing cabinets, for example. I think that's the Dead Sea Scrolls top right. Right now we have data in numerous places. It's in filing cabinets. Even digital data can be squirreled away and hidden on servers or even on the hard drives of individual computers. We've all done it. It's no one's fault. Everyone's busy. Everyone's trying to do the best job they can. So how do we improve the situation? How do we remove the silos where people and teams are often operating in isolation, or there's a vast amount of data being subject to manual handling? It's, you know, it's email between colleagues and so on. So what's required is a good highway asset management system. Now, if I use the word HAMS, I apologise for this. We do get mired in acronyms occasionally, but when I say HAMS, I mean a highway asset management system. Currently, it's a product called Confirm. And what's kept in there? At the start of that, it's the National Street Gazetteer, and the reason that's important is that's why your sat nav knows where it is in Nottinghamshire. That's, you know, that information comes from our office. There's geometric information, which is roads, footways, cycleways, verges. The rights of way network is also being plotted as we speak. Other features, street lighting, drainage features that Councillor Henry was asking about earlier, street furniture, bridges, culverts and retaining walls, and also the extents of the highway that we are responsible for as well. And on the end of that, it's routes such as gritty routes and inspections. Of course, everything is plotted using GPS, so we know exactly where it is. It means we get to the main reason we have a decent highway asset management system in the first place, and that's because it's a primary tool for defending the authority against third-party claims. So we know what it is. We know it's a pothole, gritty route, inspection, whatever it is. We know where it is because everything is located through GPS, and we know when it is because every activity is date stamped and time stamped on the system. Better yet, one version of the truth in one place. It's not stored in various places on servers. It's not being emailed backwards and forwards, and you're never sure which version you're looking at. With a high quality asset management system, there is only one version of the truth. So moving on to the maintenance, there are basically effectively three types, and we're all generally aware of these. Cyclic is the routine maintenance. Again, gullies we've been talking about earlier. Frequencies can be adjusted due to the level of risk, and that can be, for gullies, that can be how often they get silted up or what type of the importance of the hierarchy of the road that they're on. Planned maintenance, of course, this will all be familiar to you. This is effectively the annual capital maintenance programme. Generally very large scale works. And reactive maintenance, these activities of course dependent upon both a good inspection regime and an efficient inquiry management system. So what's new? So riding into the equation comes something we call preventative maintenance. Call it planned patching if you like, but this involves the use of machinery to help us carry out robust proper structural patching, which due to the fact we can plan ahead, is far more efficient than reactive patching, which by definition will always be inefficient. It's necessary because it's necessary to defend the third party claims and dealing with those category 1 actionable defects at source, but they can incur extra costs in non-productive mileage, for example. So what is it? What is preventative maintenance? The reason we may go to a particular site might be a reactive one. So excessive pothole repairs, reactive patching, utility trenches and so on, cracking, loss of stone, all those sorts of things. So the reason we go there might be reactive. However, once we leave the site and we've carried out the preventative patching work, we aim to have carried out enough work to have created a preventative outcome, which in simple terms means when the highway inspector next visits the site on their routine inspection, there are no actionable defects to be found, which also leads to less impact down the line on the county council's revenue budgets. Prevention is better than cure, if you like. So what does it look like on the ground? Some of the plant involved. What you can see there is a JCB with an arm that carries out small areas of planing. A Bobcat is a small 4-wheel drive vehicle, again with a small planer attachment. What's interesting there is the bottom left is what we call a hot box. What that does, it means store material at a usable temperature for a longer period of time. So again, we get to cut down on the amount of mileage of vehicles between tarmac plants and back and so on. So it's all about dialing in those efficiencies as well. So overall, the whole scope of maintenance, when we talk about preventative as well, it's not just patching. There's the Roadmaster, the spray injection chip patcher, which Martin will show you a photo of later on. So in terms of non-invasive treatments, surface dressing, micro asphalt, for example, highly polished road surface. We've all seen these. They get reduced grip in damp conditions. Surface dressing is the application of a binder, sticky binder, followed by chip-ins, seals the road surface, preventing the ingress of water, which is the biggest threat to the integrity of road layers through freezing and thawing and the pumping action of heavy vehicles as well. Important to note that cost estimate in the top right hand corner of this one. So for every pound you might spend at this point carrying out a preventative treatment, can be as much as 4 times expensive when you start to do thicker layers and you start to do treatments which are more invasive. So resurfacing might involve the planing off of the top surface or even deeper. It can be an overlay if the conditions are all right, usually around 40 to 50 millimeters thick. Technique is used on roads which are beyond surface dressing or micro asphalt. So the regulating qualities of the micro aren't enough to put the right quality back, and then you're into something more invasive like this. And again, top right hand corner, you're looking at 4 times more expensive than preventative treatments, and you're tackling sites which are a little bit further down the curve as well. So then you're into the really heavy work, reconstruction, which involves very deep planing. It's reserved for the very, very worst roads where significant structural failure has occurred. Should bear in mind all of these road surfaces are kept safe via the routine safety inspection regime. Not pretty, but safe. And again, you're now talking at least 12 times more expensive than preventative treatments if you are reconstructing roads. And again, you can see the machinery there that's required for that. You're talking large plants, so the cost goes up significantly. So really, final slide from me, prioritization is key. You're still following asset management principles, which Martin spoke about with the incentive fund and the DFT funding all around that. Still have preventative elements in there. We look for critical sites in each condition band, the ones that must be attended to first before they tip over into a more expensive treatment. So looking at the dot there at the point where you go from surface deterioration to resurfacing, what you're looking at there is we have surface dressing, we have micro asphalt. There's been a lot of talk around micro asphalt, but that can save roads from becoming more expensive to maintain, and it buys us time and it improves the network. So what you're looking at is, in terms of prioritization, you're trying to pick the site which is most likely to become very expensive if you don't attend to it quickly. That becomes your highest priority site because you're treating it with a less invasive, cheaper treatment, and you're saving money in the long run. So it's not always a tipping point. It's more of a zone because we're still exploring the the limits of micro asphalts and other preventative worst treatments. So the very, very worst roads, again, worst first, they're not ignored. We simply have to repair some of them every year. But again, prioritization is key. Which ones are generating the most reactive maintenance, for example, a lot of pothole repairs, repeated visits and so on. So in short, to sum up, highway asset management, much like anything in life, is really about risk management and prioritization. Risk management, we mitigate the risk of failure by carrying out preventative maintenance earlier on the deterioration curve. And the prioritisation, we prioritise those sites which are most in need. Either they're close to requiring a more expensive treatment, or they're already a burden on the county council's revenue budget. So at this point, so I'll give you time. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to hand you back to Martin.
Thank you, Ian. I'm sure we'll hear from you a bit later on. Thank you. Martin, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take control of the presentation again. Oh, just bear with me. I'll just scroll through to where Ian had got up to.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I think just to reiterate, I agree with everything Ian said there. I mean, he gives a very powerful picture of us having the tools in place to be able to keep the public safe by spending the money we have wisely in the places that that's where it's needed. And I endorse everything that Ian said there. I'm going to talk about the two elements which I spoke previously, the highway structures and the street lighting, which personally I haven't spoken an awful lot to this committee about previously.
Chairman Martin, it's Maureen. I have to go. Can I just thank you for allowing me to listen in and watch and absorb? Can I thank Martin and Ian? And could I ask that perhaps all members of the council could have this presentation sent through to them in hard copy?
Well, thank you, Maureen, and thank you for joining the presentation this morning. I'm absolutely sure we can send you copies of the slides in hard copy.
It's not just me, it's everybody else.
No, and everyone else are hard
you.
copies rather than electronically. Won't be a problem, I'm sure. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Chairman, and take care of yourself.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for your kind words. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So this is a slide that I've pulled directly from the document called what we call the HIAMP, which is the Highway Infrastructure Asset Management Plan, and it gives you an idea of the sorts of structures that we have. Save you having to go through all of those, I'll give you a bit of context. So we've got over 150 concrete bridges in the county, over 150 masonry arch bridges, and over 40 steel, cast and wrought iron bridges. And some of these are very old and they have significant value to the streetscape. So, for example, the A634 Blythe Bridge, we have a bridge there that was constructed in 1770, and it's a Grade 1 listed structure. And we've got 30 other Grade 1 or Grade 2 listed bridges throughout the authority. And the value of these elements just by themselves, if valued up to be built from scratch, is over £550 million. Again, I've put another page I've taken from the HIAMP here. It talks about the inspection frequencies of how we go about looking at our structures. Now, I don't intend to go through them all there, but I'll just give you the salient facts. So, general bridge inspection, that'll be a visual inspection. That'll take place every 2 years, and that'll generate works, minor sorts of works, minor sorts of maintenance. Then other inspections, we call them principal inspections on major structures and railway bridges. That'll be every 6 years. And for other structures, things like subways, that will be every 6 to 12 years based on a risk assessment. So if we thought it was a higher degree of risk, we'll inspect it more frequently. And underwater inspections, they're carried out every 3 years or wherever there's been a significant flooding event. VIA also has an annual bridge painting contract. So bridges like Lady Bay Bridge, they'll be repainted every 9 years, and that's vital to protect these structures from corrosion. And in addition to all that, there's also a programme of more significant repairs that are carried out. So these would be large maintenance schemes. So these would be things like significant concrete repairs, the replacement of bridge parapets, or replacing the waterproof on the bridge decking where we've seen water being pumped up through the joints or maybe coming through from the soffits on the bridge. So we tend to do about 7 or 8 of those a year. And on this slide, I've tried to illustrate how we keep score of what the work that VIA do for us and how good our bridge stock is. So we use a measure called the Adept National Bridge Conduction. So I can't get that out. National Bridge Condition Indicator System, BCI for short, and that's what I'm going to call it because I'm obviously having difficulty getting it out. And the BCI implies that for our structures, we should be aiming for a score between 80 and 100, with over 90 being very good. And we've incorporated that BCI score into the performance management framework that we have for the whole of the VIA contract. And in the right-hand side of that slide there, you'll see an excerpt from the results of the performance management framework, which VIA submit to us for their performance. So that comes every quarter.
I think members won't be able to read that, Martin, but hopefully when they get the slides, they'll see the figures you're talking about.
What I can do is I can provide the more details. That's just to illustrate. It's just, if you will, just something to make the slide a bit more interesting because there's a lot of text in it. But yeah, I can certainly make that information available to you. And in Q1, our BCI average condition index for all elements was scored at 91.
Thank you.
Then moving on to street lighting, like I said, there's a significant number of street lights in the county. So over the years, we've tried various tactics with this. We've tried the bulk clean and change, where we had a cyclic renewal of all the bulbs. The old sorts of bulbs were very much like a bulb in your house. They'd burn out over a finite length of time. And then we also tried leaving them to burn to extinction to see if that would be a more viable strategy and a more cost-effective strategy. But in truth, neither of those are, they're not viable in the modern world, especially with the new products that are available. So the LEDs that we're installing now, I think they give a good quality of light, and they provide a much better service to the public. You know, we've noticeably found the number of defects have come down in areas where we've deployed LEDs. And I think at the moment we've got over 70,000 LEDs have been replaced the existing bulb units. So as I was saying, the LEDs are on average 60% more efficient than the old SOX unit. So that was the old orange light you used to see around the place. So that imparts a significant reduction in carbon dioxide and also in the authority's electricity costs. LEDs also last longer, so they last up to 25 years. So there's less maintenance, although we do have a 6-year testing program. Now, those savings are quite difficult to quantify, because they vary depending on the wattage and the aspect of the place that the LED is deployed. But to give you some ideas of the savings that can be achieved, in a residential location, a conventional SOX lantern would have cost between £25 and £30 a year in electricity costs, whereas our LED will probably cost us between 5 and 8. So those are substantial savings. And for the more higher wattage lanterns, the savings would be even greater. Another powerful development has been using thicker section galvanized light columns. These have a life expectancy of 50 years, and when used in tandem with the LEDs, you can see we've got an asset there that will remain in place and functioning effectively and consistently for many decades. There will be some elements of maintenance required, but like I said, we will have a dependable lighting stock. So there are developments, there's places we're going to go in the future. We're not resting on our laurels there. Ian's spoken to you about preventative maintenance and some of the things that we've done already. And on there, you can see the spray injection patching machine, the JCB with its planing head, and also the hot box there. But there's other things that we want to look at as well. So, for example, in situ recycling of road surfaces where we've encountered tar. These would be in estate roads where we're now coming across contaminated material which is potentially carcinogenic. I mean, that material, there's only really 2 options for it. One is to take it to a licensed tip. Now, as nearest one is probably in Skegness. So that's an expensive and time-consuming exercise. Or in the past, we've taken it off-site and processed it to be reused in the highway. But again, that generates a lot of movements and a lot of costs. So if we can find a process where we can plane the material and reuse it in situ, That'll reduce the number of vehicle movements, the amount of energy we consume, and also the amount of money we pay. There's other things as well that we're looking at. So there's smaller hot boxes. So I think that the one that you see in the centre of the picture there is an 18-ton vehicle. It's an extremely good vehicle, but in some places it may be difficult to get it in. So in smaller areas, smaller streets, we may look to deploy a vehicle that's about 7.5 tons. And I think that's currently been done very successfully. Also, via looking at introducing mobile asphalt mixers. I think in essence, this is like a heated, rotating aggregate mixing machine. So they only need to mix the amount of aggregate they need on site. And I'm really interested to see how that pans out. And also electrically powered welfare units. So, going forward, the vehicle that contains the toilet and also the mess, that'll be electrically powered. So there'll be benefits for the environment there. And there's also some other developments on here that Ian would wish to talk to you about. So I'll hand over to him at this point.
Thank you, Martin. Welcome back, Ian.
Hello. Yes, just finally to wrap this up again, new developments that have been looked at the moment. I talked about the HAMS, the asset management system. Again, we're investigating that and looking at ways of improving that and making it very 21st century. I mean, the current pandemic, the very reason we're all online now and not in a big room together, has brought all that into sharp relief, certainly over the last 6 months. And whilst we've kept the wheels on incredibly efficiently, it's raised a few interesting ideas about developing our IT capability and moving away to into more web-based, more cloud-hosted solutions, so you can be a lot more lighter on your feet, mobile solutions and such like, while still feeding into the one version of the truth and all the information in one place, if you like. So that's one development there we're looking at, and on the back of that, when you've got more active, more agile IT systems. Gary spoke about it earlier with the telemetry potentially on trash screens and such like. You can then start to integrate elements of self-reporting now, whether that's pumping stations, whether that's individual gullies in particularly areas prone to flooding, so you can monitor all these sort of things. Other assets too, lighting, traffic signals. You can start to digitize that in such a way that activities happen. Data goes in at source. There's no manual handling. I mean, that leads to massive time savings in staff time and, of course, cost on the back of that as well. So these are all continuous developments. And if you click that on a bit further, Martin, you start to see that elements that are already there but are constantly being developed, apps on the county council's website, interaction with social media as well, which is extremely well developed at the moment. So we're not standing still on all of this, and the developments just keep coming. I know Nottinghamshire's very keen on innovation as well, so that's something we're pushing all the while, whilst obviously making sure any innovation isn't just a shop window innovation. It's actually got some meat and gravy behind it, if you like. It's based on solid principles. So that's where we're going. So I'd like to wrap it up at that point, and I'll leave it with Martin to sign off. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ian.
Yes, thank you. So if happy to take questions at that point.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Ian. I'm sure both of you will come back in a minute. I've got one hand raised already. That's David. So I'll go without any further ado. I'll go straight to David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, it's a very interesting report, so thank you, chaps. It's very comprehensive, and I think it explains a lot of issues. And I do think that as a county council, we don't shout enough about the investment in technology that we're making in this area, because it's one of the biggest complaints as a county council that we get. And I think the more that the public realise that the heavy line of investment that is being made will have an impact ongoing, because we've always said, like 4 years ago, we said that we haven't really got an endless budget, so we have to make more of what we've got, and that's exactly what you're doing. You're economising, and the IT side, which has been exacerbated by COVID, which is making your working methods more keener IT wise, which is only good. I think a couple of things. One of the things is, I mean, in Ashfield, we've been very fortunate to have the LED system installed across the whole district. We're probably one of the first districts to have that. My biggest issue with that is, and other asset management, is car accidents, and I think, you know, vehicles impacting on the assets themselves. You did a great report. I think it was I can't see the date on it, but I think it's March 19, where we were using a company called Artemis to retrieve some of those costs. And I think with the acceleration of all this technology, I think it would be key, and I'm sure you're already doing it because I've seen some of it in this report from March 19. I've got it here in front of me. Sorry to crucify you with it, but you know, one of the biggest things is all car accidents are logged by insurance companies, and the extraction of the cost of the damage to the asset for the county council must be huge. And I know in this report I can see there are balances and checks where you've been getting money, you've been better at getting that money back. I mean, I've got a particular junction down, just to give you an example, Main Road Underwood, where it crosses with Will Hallow Lane and Lower Bagthorpe, and every single article of street furniture has been hit, bent or damaged, whether it be district responsibility, county responsibility, or Severn Trent even, you know. So I think the accidents that are logged via the insurance is crucial that we focus on that area, because at the end of the day, we might have LED light fittings on our new columns, but if they're getting hit by cars, they're not going to last 50 years. And we need to be very proactive about checking up that when car accidents, whether it be car, vehicle, or even farmers with their hedge cutters clipping them, you know, because I've got 7 lampposts on one road and they're all leaning. And I had a meeting with my highways manager the other day, and he said, well, we do check them all. The via guys check them all, the engineers check them all, but it's a mammoth task, as you well know. And I think homing in on that accident, reporting, you know, insurance claims and stuff like that, because I've had 5 grit boxes replaced where people have written them off with cars and they've been not replaced by the insurance company. It's always the district or the county authority that ends up footing the bill. So I think while we're talking about IT, accident and insurance to me would be one of the biggest things. The other thing is as well is riparian ownership, where farmers cut their own hedges and they don't cut the hedge right up to the article, whether it be a direction sign, a lamppost, or a 30 sign. They either don't cut up to it or they knock the bugger over. You know, it's one or other. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to be. I've got 2 lampposts on, just to give you an example, Felly Lane North, where the riparian ownership cut the hedges. There's a hawthorn tree growing at the side of one lamppost. That's because they don't clip into the. So it's basically useless, isn't it? So it's great work, you know. And I've like Maureen, I've had a county councillor information pack from Johnny Davis. It's great, but there are certain little things that we do need to home in on. And one of my biggest issues would be the insurance element and the recuperation of those funds when people are damaging the assets that belong to the county.
David, thank you very much for very constructive comments. They're very helpful indeed. I'll bring in Gary at this point. I think there's something you can do with what you've just said. Gary, would you like to come in, please?
Thanks, Councillor Martin, for your observations. I think with committee's approval and the chair's approval, that we'll bring a recommendation to the next committee along those lines of making sure that our arrangements and accident reporting and recovery are as robust as they can be. And also, I think there's probably something as well in terms of what you said there about making riparian owners more aware of their responsibilities. So that's another, again with committee's permission and the chair's permission, another recommendation that we can take forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. We can add that later on. Thank you, David, once more. Are you happy with that, David, and the recommendation being proposed?
Yeah, but I do think we need to shout as a county council about the investment side of it, because people are horrified at the condition of the roads, because it's such a colossal job and they don't realise that, you know. And I think the unclassified roads, the potholes, you know, I mean, one of my biggest arguments would be that it looks from the outside like the county council views VFX as a permanent solution when it's only meant to be temporary, but that's because of budgetary and health and safety. We know that. So we need to be more clear about telling the public what we're doing and how and why, because that would help us on the front line. That's just my observation.
Absolutely, and Gary's nodding away. I'm sure that could go back to community-based committee as well to get the publicity that you mentioned out there in the public domain. Thank you, Martin. Much appreciated. Bring Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it was a good presentation that you put forward, and yes, we all know that the problem is finance, and we all know it's a big, huge problem that faces you that's going to take some time. I want to, well, first of all, let me get one little irritant off my chest, and that is, when we go out and do repairs, will we please collect all the signs and take them back with us? I've got places where they've signs that say that the road will be closed in June. And things sits there, and you need to chase them up, or I ring up and say, and they come and collect them. That's my little grumble, etc. But what I wanted to concentrate on, and that is that from Newark we've got quite a lot of cycle routes, and a lot of those cycle routes also are on the pavement. One's line for pedestrians, one side for cycles. We don't seem to be maintaining them in any sort of way that would encourage any cyclist to actually ride down on them, because they are really lethal. So they actually ride on the part of the pavement where people use, and then they complain and get upset. And equally, the ones that are in the road where there's no particularly marked out area other than a blue sign down the end of the street, again, doesn't encourage people. Now, one of the things that lockdown for the virus has shown is that people are getting out and more cyclists are about. So while we want cyclists to be about because it's healthy, etc., and a lot more cleaner, we don't seem to want to invest in that one. You don't get many footpaths, and I've reported several of them and try and put them on the 5 most important thing in your area, where pavements, in actual fact, most of this put in under 60s, 70s house building, the actual surface of the pavement has gone to dust. There is no pavement left. So how are we going to push these forward? Because, as I say, they're quite an important thing for us to be able to offer our pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Doug, will you take the first point about removing signs which are no longer relevant?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Yes, what I can do is I'll do a reminder. Well, obviously, there are a number of people working on the highway doing repairs. We have large teams as VIA doing that work, but we also work through Tarmac as a key surfacing provider and some of their subcontractors. So I will do a round robin across our own teams and our supply chain to remind them of the need to remove signs when the works are completed.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, the thing with it is I just don't want us to keep buying more signs to put them out because we haven't got the old ones back.
Yeah,
good point.
Thank you. Thank you. Gary, do you want to pick up a second point?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I think you're right. It's important that we can consider all road users, including cyclists. So as part of the inspection manual that we have with the inspectors, there is mention of considering cyclists as road users and making sure that that the roads are fit for their use. But I think if it's a concern of yours and it's a concern of committee, we can take that away and ensure that we are getting that message over to our inspectors and that we're making sure that we're investing as much money as we need to in that area of work. So again, it might be something that we take away and bring a recommendation back and consider it and bring a recommendation back to committee, considering how we can reinforce the concerns that you've just made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very valid concerns. Thank you, Stuart, for that, and thank you, Gary, for coming back on that. And yes, please, we'll come back on that later on. Thank you.
And I can be found peddling, you see, that's why I know about it.
So pleased to hear it. So pleased to hear it. Thank you, Stuart.
Complete in the lycra.
Well done. No, too much information, Stuart. Thank you.
Precisely.
Councillor Longden, John.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to compliment on what both last two members were saying. This is a cracking report, highly in-depth, and gives a lot of answers that we can use to I sit on 3 parish councils as well. Can give me an awful lot of answers to their questions. But as I said, we're investigating all the time. I'd be glad to get the hard copy so I can carry that with me, make notes from it, which I intend. I would have made some notes today. It's a cracking report. Also, I'd like to say something about the curbs, particularly someone like myself going for a new knee operation, but that's about done by now. Unfortunately, Corbo delayed all this sort of thing. And some of the curbs, I must admit, when they're not, if they're at an angle, you're like walking lopsided. You don't really notice it if your legs are a good light. When you've got someone like that waiting for a new knee, you can feel the difference. It can be quite painful. I've also got a little moan. I've got on my avenue, I must have 2 of the last converted gas to electric lamps, right? And they're coming to shift the one end of my drive and put an LED up. I like this old one. It's better, I think, for me. But well done. But like I said, I thought, I compliment everybody else. This is a cracking piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for a very constructive and a nice comment. And I obviously totally agree with what you said about the report. Of course I do. Is there any specific reply you want, John, from the officers, or you're happy with them to take your comments away?
No, can't help me take my comments away.
Thank you, John. Much appreciated. Liz, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you.
You're on mute, Liz.
Can't hear me. Now you can hear me. Yep.
We can hear you. Yes, thank you, Liz.
Yes, thank you. That was a really interesting and informative report, and obviously it helps to clarify really the enormity of the asset of the estate actually, and see it in print. But I could not agree more with Councillor Wallace in terms of those are the issues that were concerning me in terms of footpaths, really, pavements. Are we talking about the same thing when I say that? 4,302 kilometres of footway. Does that mean pavements? Because, and obviously Councillor Wallace raised the danger of a cycle path that then suddenly merges onto the pavement, which is also in my area, and I have had a number of complaints about that, not recently, but certainly in the past. But the state of the pavements in general, I have many complaints about around in my particular area. And I'm just wondering how, in terms of prioritising, I mean, and obviously I would imagine, well, I'm sure that roads come before pavements, but some of them are absolutely dangerous certainly to the elderly. I've seen, obviously, elderly people with walking frames, and again, we have the issue with the trees and the roots and the whatever, and then we can go back to diamond cable and all the mess that they made. But how do we actually prioritise which pavements actually get addressing, and does that come into some form of cycle or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I offered that either Martin or Gary. Which one of you would like to take that one?
Martin, would you like to take that?
Yes, certainly. When there's a list of schemes that we look at. They are prioritised, and there's a finite amount of money which is available for footway maintenance. Anything that doesn't get onto the list in any one year will be on a candidate list. But if you've got particular concerns about sections of footway, if you could let me know, and I'll have them investigated to try and alleviate your concerns.
Thank you. I think you may have rather long list coming your way, David, from lots of members here. From here, Martin, sorry. You may have a long list coming your way. No, in all seriousness, if they really are concerning you, yes, Martin's made a very generous offer today. If you could please let him know, that would be greatly appreciated. Is that all right, Liz? Thank you. David,
can I just add to that?
Sorry, Gary.
Sorry, Chair. Could I just supplement Martin's answer? So just in terms of the way they're prioritised, obviously our highway inspectors inspect the network on a regular basis, and part of that inspection isn't just looking at the road surface; it's also looking at the footways. I think sometimes there's confusion in the language because highway engineers, the pavement, that's the bit of the road, it's also the road construction in their language. They call that pavement as well. And obviously when the public are talking about pavement, they mean the footways that are either side of the road. So that's where there's sometimes some confusion. But Martin's right, we do have a specific budget for footways, and we do prioritise. But again, as Martin said, please let us know if you've got areas of concern, and we'll make sure they're inspected.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Liz, do you want to come back on that before I move to David? You're on mute, Liz.
Didn't hear that.
Thank you, Liz.
There is a specific budget. Could you tell us what that specific budget actually is for the footways?
You're on mute, Gary.
Yep, please, Gary, if you're on mute.
It's good that I'm on mute because I was just searching for the figure and talking to myself.
Did it on purpose.
So it's,
As honesty for
I
you.
envisaged that we might have a question about budget. So the budget for footways is 1.3 million.
Okay, thank you.
And that obviously forms part of our report that we bring to Communities in Place committee with the annual programme.
Thank you. David, you want to come back?
Yeah, so Mike, coming back really on pavements, because I didn't touch on that last time, because from my public's point of view, the pavements are a lost cause and have been abandoned along with the Titanic around Selston. You know, is there any, I mean, I might be speaking out of turn, but I was just wondering if there was any possible way that we could get local firms to sponsor the pavements in areas that an offset against their own tax. Is that an idea that we could not look at? Investment from outside companies in individual areas that may be willing to sponsor pavements in different areas as a tax liability offset. I don't know. That's just a thought, because we've obviously not got any more money to chuck into the highways budget. And from my point of view, pavements have been abandoned, whether they're being inspected or not. I mean, I've got one on the B600 that's in the same condition now as it's been in since I got married in 1989. You know, and it's no better now than it was. It's no better. In fact, it's much worse now than it was then. You know, to me, it's just a thought. So I don't know if that route's ever been explored. You know, about local companies wanting to sponsor our pavements. I don't know.
Thank you, David. I think the tax offset's possibly unlikely to be a runner, but I'll ask Gary to come in on the issue of sponsorship.
I think there's certainly some merit in exploring alternative funding mechanisms. I think there would be probably some potential legal issues around that as well, because obviously it's one of our statutory duties to make sure that, you know, pavements are safe for members of the public. But I do hear what you're saying in terms of generating ideas to find funding. So that's something that we'll take away. And I think the other thing, again, that I'm hearing from members, and again with committee's permission and your permission, Chair, is that we'll take away the thoughts around our footways on the network and consider whether the funding for our footways is at an appropriate level compared with the rest of the network, and just see whether we've got that balance right.
I think that's very important, because, yeah, thumbs up there from Liz, and clearly the amount of comments this morning and from David seem to suggest maybe we need to, and from Errol seem to suggest maybe that needs looking at. Now, you've mentioned lots of recommendations, Gary. Do you mean recommendations to go into a paper, or recommendations emerging from this committee?
I think what I'm trying to do as we go through, I'm trying to gather together your deliberations, if you like, so that Martin and I and Ian and colleagues can work up the next paper and go away and do some work and research for the next meeting, as it were.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
And I'm happy. Sorry, Councillor. I'm happy to summarise those if you wish at the end of the meeting, if that's what you'd like me to do.
That would be very helpful, so we all know where we stand in terms of the next paper going forward from that. Thank you. I've got no other hands shown, so I must assume everyone's had their say. Or if you haven't, please let me know. In that case, Gary, perhaps are you happy for me to take that summary now before we move on to the recommendations, etc., in the paper, or would you rather give you a bit more time?
No, I'm happy to do that now. I do think that I must have had a relative at some point that was a doctor, because I do struggle to read my own writing sometimes. So the things I've captured, and these are in no particular order. Consider how we interact with the public around our approach to asset management, our ecology, to make sure the public are more aware of our plans and the way that we manage the assets. Consider whether we are doing enough around accident recovery and making sure that we're you know, covering the bases in terms of recovering money from accidents, as it were, and making sure that we follow those things up. I think we've heard from members that they're concerned about cycling and making sure that our highway inspectors and other people that are involved in the asset management process have got those concerns high enough up their agenda, particularly with what we've seen with COVID, with there's more folks out using the network. I think the other thing that we've heard as well around footways is that there's some concern from members around the way they're prioritised, and to consider whether we've got the way that we cut the cake up, whether the knife is going in at the right point for footways. So whether there's enough money being spent on our footway network. So they're the things that I've picked up. There might be, Chair, other colleagues on the call, so Doug or Martin might have picked up some other things, but I think they're the key issues for us to take away today.
I'd like to add in there, if I may, responding to Councillor Longden's comment earlier, there is it's a relatively high level asset management leaflet which exists as well. I know Gary spoke about one for drainage being created, but there's also it's very broad brush, but some of the comments that Councillor Longden made, it will address many of those, and it is useful then for passing that information on to constituents as well, so we can make that available.
That's excellent. Good. David, you got your hand up?
Yeah, you know, when you do the leaflet about the flood risk management and the drainage cleaning per district, could we know what the cost is to clean each district in the leaflet, so that people get an idea of the percentage that's being spent out of the budget in that area on drain cleaning, really, when you do that leaflet? Yeah. Because the perception I get is like, oh, you bloody left that drain, I reported it to you last year and it's never been done. When we're canvassing and when we're leafleting, we report them as we go around all the time, and they get picked up. But builders are the worst ones when they set up concrete mixing on the road and they flood it. And I can agree with what somebody else said about leaves. Councillor Garner wanted it, but that's a sporadic autumnal thing. It's not a year-round thing.
Well, Gary's nodding your way, so I think you've got your support there, David. Okay, we're happy with that. Well, Gary's anything further you want to add to that, or are you happy for us to pull it together now?
No, I'm happy with that. Unless there's anything else that members think we've missed from the discussion, that's the summary that we will now take away and do work on and bring a further paper back to you after we've considered where we are with all those issues.
Are we all happy with that? No one's telling me otherwise. So yes, lots of nodding, lots of thumbs up. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you guys. Excellent. So what I'm therefore have in front of me, we now move to the vote on the recommendation paper you have in front of you. Is to review the information contained in the report and its accompanying presentation and proposed developments, which will be subject to a further report for the committee to consider. Well, you've just done that, and Gary summarised it very, very well indeed. So unless anyone shows a hand objecting or would like to abstain, I take it that everyone's happy with the recommendation as written out in the report and which I've just read out as well. Okay, thank you, much appreciated. Right, we go to a work programme. Hand over the chief. Is that to you, Gary, to look at the work programme?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So I'm just trying to find my papers, which I've managed to close. 1 second, here we go.
All right, no problem.
So as members will see on the work programme for the next committee on the 26th of November, there's obviously the highway asset management recommendations, and then there are unusually some non-highway papers coming your way. So there's a paper on green estates and tree planting, and then there's a paper on the mid-term contract review on the waste PFI. So as it stands, Chair, they're the papers that are on the forward programme as it stands. Okay,
and obviously we'll fill in the blank spaces for January and April, or January before the next meeting. Thank you. Are we all happy with that? Again, if anyone indicates they're not or would like to stay, David.
Yeah, there's only one question I'd like to ask Gary about the midterm.
Please do.
mid-term contract waste review, PFI. Am I led to believe that the City Council are involved with that?
I'm afraid that I don't know the answer to that,
No.
Councillor Martin, because it's not one of my work areas. But obviously, I can find out the answer to that, or if I can ask Mick Allen to give you a call.
Yeah, if you could, yeah. And will we be bringing the way that we manage the insurance loss adjusters element? When will that be coming back onto the work programme then? The Artemis work.
Sorry, is that?
How
I think the idea is.
How
yeah,
we
I think sorry, Councillor Martin. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think the idea is we bring that back on the 26th of November as part of the recommendations from this meeting. There'll be an opportunity in there for us to present how that currently works and for a discussion around that at that point.
In your asset management paper?
Yes,
okay.
That's okay. With you and the chair. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, all I can say is thank you ever so much to all members present here this morning who have made a very, very detailed contribution and active contribution to the discussions. And thanks to the officers who obviously put on a huge amount of work behind the scenes. We don't always see that, but yeah, really appreciate it. And to whoever the members of the public who are joining the live stream, thank you for looking in as well. Unless anyone's got anything else, thank you once more for indulgence, and sorry about what happened earlier when I lost you, literally, so to speak, for a few minutes. Thank you, and I look forward to the next meeting, and take care, and wherever you are, stay safe.
Bye, Gordon. All the best for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Gordon. It's always a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.